I came over here and I served. You are?
Okay, our light is on. I didn't hear him say 30 seconds. I guess I was busy, but welcome everyone this evening. I'll call the meeting to order. Would you like to join us in the Pledge Allegiance to the flag? I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, Teresa, could we get a roll call, please?
Councilor Olson.
Here.
Sykes.
Yo.
Johnson. Here. Kellum.
Here.
Kopsinski.
Here.
Coburn.
Here.
Mayor Pinota.
Here.
Thank you.
Okay, before we start our scheduled business, I would like to welcome our new city manager, Peter Trozen, to the dais this evening. Peter came from Bothell, Washington. Did I say that right? Yes. And so he's been kind of probably overloaded with information that we have been trying to pack into his mind this week. So, but we want to welcome him, and he's going to enjoy our community as we have a great community in Albany, and we're looking forward to our working relationship with Peter. So, welcome. Okay. First, for scheduled business is a public hearing. And this one is for adopting the supplemental budget for 2016-17. With that, I will open up the public hearing at 7:18 p.m. According to that clock, that's actually early, but off. But oh yes, do you have anything? Okay, Stuart, did you have anything to say?
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. I'd like to give an introduction to the public hearing this evening. We're to receive input regarding some changes in the current year budget. As the council recalls, last meeting gave consideration to adopting next year's budget and made a motion to adopt next year's budget. This action and public hearing this evening is to make adjustments to the current year budget, and in each of the cases or causes for the public hearing this evening or for the changes that are being made, the City Council has given direction previously for the items. So I'd like to review what each of those are just briefly. The first item, if you recall, in the Audit Committee report in January, our auditor had suggested a change in accruals in the general fund and other funds that receive accruals on a monthly or quarterly basis. And we received direction from our auditor and concurred with that direction that we modify how those accruals were recorded in our financial reports, and effectively created 13 reporting periods in the previous budget year, which created then a revenue available in the general fund. We made a proposal and recommendation to the Audit Committee and then to the City Council that those dollars be set aside for replacement of our financial information system. And the City Council gave direction that we do that. And this first item then makes that change. It moves money from the general fund to the capital projects fund to position those dollars for an RFP process and the competitive bid and competitive process to consider replacing our financial information system. So on page 7 of your packet, it reflects in the resolution the change to the capital projects fund. However, there was an error in the way that program was identified, and so I want to draw it to your attention. There's a corrected version on the dais of page 7, and it properly identifies the program in the Capital Projects Fund as the Albany Data Integration Project. That's the same line item, the same project program that was used previously, which was now about 12 years ago, 10 years ago, when we switched to the current financial system, Eden. And so we will resurrect that program and this would make a change to move those dollars. In the budget that was approved by the City Council last week, it reflects this change having been made in the current year based on the direction that the council had given previously. So that's the first item. The second item in the supplemental budget is to make adjustments in the current budget that reflect the unfortunate departure of Kate Portia, who was our Economic Development and Urban Renewal Director, and we've had other directors that have been assuming some of the duties and responsibilities of that position. So the second item is to move dollars from the Economic Development Program to reimburse the Parks and Recreation Program, where Ed Hodney has been providing urban renewal work and activities during this budget year. And the other part of that is to reposition or move some dollars from the Economic Development Fund to the IT budget, where Jorge has been providing economic development support. So based on the direction from council and the reassignment of duties during the current budget year, this would shift the budget to reflect those change in duties. And again, it was an item given consideration by the city council previously in how those duties would be performed during this current budget year. The third item, there is a new fund in the current budget, and that's the Stormwater Fund. And we made estimates in the current year budget as to what the expenditure level would be for that fund in the current year. And through the course of the year, we identified that those estimates were too low. And so there were more expenditures that could be attributed to those activities. And so next year's budget reflects a more accurate estimate in the budget and what the charges need to be to support those activities and what those activities will actually be in the Stormwater Fund. So based on the budget as adopted by the City Council and the intent for that fund to reflect the actual costs of that activity, that item's on the supplemental budget to be able to reflect those costs in the appropriate fund. So those are the three areas that are being addressed in the supplemental budget. I want to also mention that Ann Baker is here, who is the accounting supervisor that prepares this resolution, and she will assist me with questions that may come from the City Council or come up during the public hearing. But with that, we'd be happy to respond to questions or see what comments we receive.
Okay, questions? Yeah,
I have
Rich?
one. The funds for stormwater, is that the portion coming from streets? Or is this coming from higher charges or?
It's charges, isn't it? Charges to,
It is charges mainly in the stormwater, correct me if I'm wrong, Chris?
Right. Yeah, the Stormwater Fund now is not receiving, since we implemented the fee, it does not receive transfers from sanitary sewer or streets. So that's the answer to your question. And the overage this year was just we did more work than we anticipated that we would do, and there weren't adequate revenues from those fees to pay for that work, so that's why the supplemental.
Where's the money coming from is the question.
Fees, the stormwater charges.
There was an increase in fees collected to support the increase in the expenditures.
And that is reflected in next year's budget.
Next year's budget was easier to predict because we had revenues from the current fiscal year on which to base a full fiscal year's worth of anticipated revenue. The budget we built for this fiscal year was done in December of 16 and was more of a guess. So that's why it was off.
I think where the confusion may be for you, Rich, is that the resolution only shows the expenditures because that is what is appropriated. The charges in that fund will also be increased in this adjustment as well to balance the fund out, but that's not shown on the resolution.
So basically, it's to address, we did an estimate at the beginning, and this is just to address an adjustment, because now we have more final numbers.
Well, I understand, I'm just, does that mean there's a rate increase?
No.
So where is the money actually coming from? Is it, that is paying the increased bill?
so
More revenue was collected than
Okay.
anticipated.
Yeah, that's what's estimated before.
Under the
Same rate.
rates that we had in place? Okay, thank you.
Jeff's coming up too, I see. Yeah. Did you want to add to it?
They're fine. We started getting revenue March 1st that we didn't know when we prepared the 16-17 budget if we were going to start the utility this current fiscal year's
Right.
budget for revenue that then once it went in place March 1st. Yeah.
Got it.
Yeah,
Revenue coming in now.
same rate.
Increased costs.
Mayor.
Okay, Ray?
Okay, I guess is it just pure coincidence that on page 4 of our packet, it shows the sewer fund right above stormwater, and one is increasing by 250. It's 250,000 for both of them, it's just coincidental?
Yes.
Even numbers, okay.
Any other questions? Okay, all right. Is there anybody that would like to comment on the 2016-2017 supplemental budget? Okay, not seeing anyone. With that, I will close the public hearing at 7:27 PM. Council, you have a resolution on page 5.
Move that we adopt the resolution
Second.
Excuse me, Mayor? Could I request with the change that's on the dais?
with the changes on the dais.
Thank you.
Okay,
Second, number 2.
all right. And any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Okay, motion carried. All right, thank you. Next, we will open the public hearing at about 7:27 again, at same time, and this will be for repealing Resolution 6514 and revising fees and charges for Parks and Recreation Services for fiscal year 2017-18. Okay, Ed, you got a report?
Thank you, Mayor. We come every year at the same time after we know what the budget is going to be, and then we bring fee adjustments to you that support the budget that you've adopted. Every year, we take a look at all of our fees in our fee structure, and we identify fees that from a standpoint of cost recovery or from a standpoint of being comparable with our peers close by, whether those fees need to be adjusted. We don't adjust every single fee every single year because our customers probably would rebel a little bit if we were going up each and every year. So we try to do this incrementally, and usually every 2 to 3 years those fees are adjusted. And so what you see reflected in the attachment are a bunch of strikeouts on fees and then substitutions of the new fees, the increased fees. With that, I'd be glad to answer any specific questions you might have, but this is something we do every single year.
Okay, questions, Bessie?
Yeah, Ed, the increases, are they around 13%?
It varies, but yes. Some of them went up significantly more than others, and those, Bessie, are going to be the fees that we haven't made adjustments to in a while. And again, typically what we're trying to do is we're trying to capture the costs and the adjustment in our expenses related to inflation or related to contracted services or whatever. So if there's a more significant increase, it's because the expenses related to that particular facility or program have gone up more significantly perhaps than some of the others have.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I guess.
All right, is there one in particular that you're concerned about?
No, not really. I just noticed, that they've, just some of them have gone up, a little bit, and maybe it'd be kind of nice to know when the last time it was increased and maybe a little bit more detail about it, because this is just basically, okay, this is it, and.
I'd be glad to provide you afterwards with a report. I don't have that information with me, but glad to do that.
Okay, great, thanks.
Any other questions of Ed? Okay, thank you, Ed.
Thank you.
Is there anyone that would like to comment during this public hearing for the Parks and Recreation fees and charges? Okay, not seeing anyone. With that, I will close the public hearing at 7:30 PM. Council, you have a resolution on page 11.
Move to approve.
Second.
Okay, any discussion? Okay, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Okay, motion carried. All right, next is business from the public. Is there anyone here that would like to bring an item forward? Yes. You'll need to state your name and furnish your address, please.
John Robinson. I reside at 2500 Del Rio Court Southeast, Albany, 97322. I came tonight, I want to talk about stormwater. And I talked to a bunch of people before coming tonight and was kind of recommended that I bring some handouts. So I've got some handouts that you can follow along with what I'm saying, I guess a little bit easier. Can I approach?
Yes, go ahead and hand them to Teresa.
Teresa,
She
okay.
can pass
There's
them
just
around.
10 copies, I just kind of
Okay,
counted.
that should be sufficient, thank you.
So just kind of some background while she's passing those out. Obviously, I have a home in Albany. I have water and sewer. I have gutters on my house. That stormwater goes through the gutters to the street. I have a storm drain on my street. And so I feel the city's providing a service in dealing with my stormwater at my residence. You passed the, what's it called? It's a resolution, I guess. And so, since I have water and sewer, I'm receiving a discount on my water and sewer to make up for the stormwater, and I'm paying that at my residence. And so, while I might fundamentally disagree with the stormwater on fundamental principles, and I don't want to get into the weeds on that, I think the city's providing me a service, and I'm paying for that at my residence. I have a business property in Albany, however, and that's the point that I'd like to speak about briefly. And as you can see there, my business property is located at 100 Davidson Street. So that's just north of Old Salem, between Old Salem and the railroad track. If you're driving to the Water Gardens or Talking Water Gardens or the city sewer down there, you've been by my property. It's a mini storage property on the left-hand side of that street. And so prior to coming here, as I mentioned, I talked to Jeff Babbitt, I talked to Jeff Blaine, I talked to Sean Kidd, my counselor Rich Kellum, and even Wes Hare before he left, to try to get some resolution, and several of those individuals recommended that I come to council, and so that's what brings me here tonight. The first thing that was an issue of me in reviewing all the documentation, and when I came to the city and found out about this, everybody pointed me to the website, pointed me to all the information that you've published, and so I read through all of that, and one of the first things that I kind of had an issue with was this number 1 on here, which talks about page 4, and on page 4 it talks about initial appeal, and it talks about a process, so forth and so on. That's for if you disagree with the calculation of the stormwater. My disagreement with the city is overcharging me the stormwater, not over the calculation of the amount. And so there wasn't really a process for me to go to, a person to talk to, and so I really didn't get the answer that I was hoping to get. And so while we're on page 4, I've kind of highlighted it there. So under page 4, under monthly bills, it states, however, under conditions where the city discontinues billing for other utility services, it may, at its discretion, choose to also discontinue billing for stormwater services. Then under the section commencement, the stormwater service charge shall commence upon connection to the city's water or sewer system or upon completion, occupancy, or use of the improvements, whichever comes first. Unified billing, stormwater service shall be billed, collected by the city in the same manner at the same time as the water and sewer service charges. Partial payments in the account shall be applied first to the stormwater, second to the sewer, finally to the water. Then on page 5, delinquent accounts. Delinquent accounts will receive written notice of the delinquency, may be subject to administrative service charge, and service discontinuation until the entire bill is paid in full. So the reason I'm pointing this out is my property at Davidson, I do not receive water or sewer service, period. I don't have so much as a mail service there, a mailbox, telephone, I don't have any cable utility, nothing. And so besides that, I don't have any sewer storm drain on that property. So that section of the street, there's no sewer storm drain. And when I improved the property, I don't know what it's been, 5 or 6 or 7 years ago, and we paved it, we put in catch basins, we did all the work that we needed to under city permit. We got permission from the city to drain to the adjacent property, which is the railroad property. The reason for that is because all the water on Davidson drains to the railroad property because there is no storm drain. So one of my contentions is that you're not providing me a service because my water doesn't go into a city-owned storm drain system or a ditch that's maintained by the city. It goes onto the railroad's property. So I'm not really receiving any services. The broader term of the services that's also used in here is the fact that I don't receive city services in the form of water or sewer. And all of these things that are in here tie the stormwater back to water and sewer service, unified billing, the whole bit. And so I view the fact that this, you're calling this a service fee, if I was to pay it, it would be more of a tax than a service fee. Additionally, there's this language, again, about the delinquent accounts. All of that stuff is tied up in that, along with, like I mentioned, at my residence where I'm receiving a discount for that additional fee because I have water and sewer. I don't have that at my business. So my business has never had water, sewer. It was that way when I bought it. Frankly, that was one of the benefits when I bought it, was like, hey, great, I can lower my cost to do business here because I don't have water and sewer. I have no need for it at that property. So what I'm requesting is that the city, per this resolution 6547, use its discretion as described to discontinue billing my property for stormwater services because I don't have a water, sewer, or service bill. Basically, I feel I would be paying for something I'm not receiving service to, and I think it's clear that it says, you know, however, under conditions, the city discontinue billing for other utility service, it may at discretion also choose to discontinue billing for stormwater services. So my problem, and all the individuals I talk to, is nobody can answer me what the criteria is behind the city using that discretion to discontinue billing. I think there's probably some fear on the city's part in talking to the individuals I did. It was mentioned that there might be 800 properties in the city that don't drain into a city sewer service or a city stormwater system, okay? I get that. I don't think granting me this discretion is going to open the door to that, because the city needs to tell me, but I am probably the only property, or maybe one of 2 or 3 or 4 properties in the city that, number one, doesn't drain into the city storm system, but more importantly, does not have city sewer or city water. So I think my property is very unique and very limited, and I don't feel there would be any kind of precedent set by granting me that discretion, okay? I don't think it opens the door, the floodgate, for everybody to come down and give it to me, you know? Anyway, I'm happy to answer any questions, but that's what I'd like the city council to take up, because I cannot get an answer from anybody that I've talked to that specifically addresses this statement in the resolution.
So what we can do, John, is, you know, you handed out the information, and staff can look it over and then give a report back to the council on addressing your concerns on this. So we can have that, and we can let you know when that report is done, too.
That'd be fine, whatever we need to do. I wasn't getting anywhere the direction I was headed.
Okay.
All right?
All right.
John, I had a question. What rate is the city billing you for that property?
That's interesting. So with the city, and I haven't paid it, I'm not paying it, the rate is $11.42 a month.
Okay.
So there's kind of some of the issue behind this is, if I'm not receiving, obviously there's some economy of scale. So my home city sewer bill is usually over $100. In the summer, like the one I just got was $142, okay? So there's economy of scale I could see when you say, hey, we're going to slip this in, it's along with water and sewer and everything. I never got a bill until this came up. So now I'm being sent a bill to collect $11.42. It just doesn't seem like there's any economy of scale in that, number one. Number two, I did read everything that's posted on the web, and there's a lot of good information there. And everybody points back to, oh, this has all been litigated, you can't get out of it, yada, yada. And there's bits and pieces, and I'm not a lawyer, but, you know, there's stuff in there about Roseburg School District that sued Roseburg. That's the link that's on the city. And so I read that, and it's legalese, it's tough to get through. But some of the things I picked up in there have to do with this definition of whether this is a tax or a service fee. And what's interesting is part of the argument, I believe, for that theirs was not a tax, was a service fee, is if you have a piece of property, you cannot lien that property as a city if it is for a service fee. You can only lien it for a tax. So I can lose my property if I don't pay a tax. I can't lose my property if I don't pay a service fee. You basically, as a city, would have to take me to court. So then it becomes another economy of scale. Are you going to pay Mr. Kidd his wages to take me to court to sue me for $11.42? So a lot of this just doesn't make sense to me economically. Does that make sense? Okay.
Thank you.
Okay,
You're welcome.
all right. Okay, Chris, did you get a copy of the?
I did.
Okay, all right, great. Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Uh-huh. Anyone else from business from the public? So, Patty, would you like to come up and introduce yourself to Peter while you're here? And you probably have heard of our Albany Veterans Day Parade. This is the gal that makes it happen, and boy, does she ever make it happen.
I'm Patty, Louisiana, and I'm about 4.5 months early to talk to all of you, but we have been working behind the scenes. I dropped off a packet this morning with our magazine, and we put on a heck of a parade. The packet I dropped off today is the beginning of all of the permits that we look for. We look for signing off, the city signing off and the police department signing off on the ODOT permits. I also dropped off a large packet for the Park and Rec Department for all of the permits, the usage, city streets, intersections, sound permits, and usage of parks throughout the city for Veterans Day. That's something else that we do. I then will take the packet, I hand carry it to ODOT, because I know sometimes things get lost in the shuffle with ODOT, bless their hearts, and then we receive it back, and then we are on our way. But everything else behind the scenes, the 400 motorcycles that show up and they are the start of the parade, the 225 entries that come into the parade. It's always amazing. Our grand marshals this year, we will have women veterans as our grand marshals, the first time in the 66 years of the Albany Veterans Day Parade. So I just had a chance to come in and introduce myself, and you'll be seeing more of me in about 4.5 months. But if you have any questions, please feel free.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Great, thank you so much, Patty. And we're always so hopeful for good weather when it comes to the parade, and it's just amazing, we're always lucky. And sometimes as soon as the parade's over, it might downpour, but, yeah, yes, Thank you, Patty.
And last year's flyover was great.
Oh, my gosh.
It was loud.
Oh, it was loud. Oh, my gosh, was it ever. It was just like right on top of us. Yeah, okay. You might be able to make that one happen, yeah. All right, thank you, Patty. Before our first reading of ordinance, Javier, did you want to, or Human Relations Commission want to say anything about the ordinance at all, or Graham, or?
Obviously, my time with Graham.
Okay. Or actually, if council has any questions over the changes, these are actually on page 16 and 17. It looks like just a few minor little language changes.
Yeah, we took a look at, the Human Relations Commission has been around since, I think the formation was in 2006 and was established in 2007.
Okay,
And we just
Graham, name and address.
Graham Kisslingberry, 1240 10th Avenue Southwest, Albany. So we decided to take a look, and we, just some minor changes, some style changes, using some language that is used today. We see this in other institutions, LBCC, for example. So we thought those were important little changes, but just basically tweaks to what the Human Relations Commission is all about.
Okay, all right. Anything else on that, Javier?
Javier Cervantes, 2041 Grace Avenue Northwest. Yeah, it's more or less an evolution. Everything evolves, our city evolves, commissions evolve, our city manager evolves, all of a sudden got younger, not retired. So, but all joking aside, everything evolves, and this is more or less trying to create a more inclusive statement and direction for what people want to know about the Human Relations Commission and what it means and what it signifies. So going off of what Graham is saying, this is probably something that has been a little bit time in coming, you know, it's maturing in such a way that it's more reflective of the community that we serve and the diversity that's there, so, yeah.
Okay, all right, any questions? Yeah, Rich?
I have 3 issues with this. The words pretty much mean the same thing, but they are the buzzwords that are out there now. And while they're used by some folks with great intention, they are also used with others like Black Lives Matter, who, and some of them beat you up if you voted for the wrong guy. And it's not that they're bad people, and I object to that. Well, I object to bad people, but what I object to is that there is some of these organizations that act this way, using that language specifically, are very interested in that guy over there abiding by the rules, but not them so much. And I don't know that we need to do that. Second thing is, I understand that the commission wants to be more of a little bit different commission than they are now. You're a committee of advice, and you want to be a committee of advocacy. I don't know that that's what we need. And finally, I'm wondering if I missed the phone call, missed the email, the knock on my door. Mr. Cervantes, as you will recall, when I agreed that I would make you my representative here, that the one codicil was that before you guys bring anything to the council, that I get a heads up.
Did you not, am I allowed to answer you now? Sir? Am I?
The reason for that is not so I have time to talk about it. The reason is to think about it beforehand,
Okay.
and, quite frankly, when things happen, sometimes you bring something to us. Well, the example of the last one that made a difference was when someone had put some garbage on people's windshields.
What was that garbage, sir?
It was,
Specifically, what was that garbage?
the garbage was language that was objectionable.
But what was that,
But we
please?
didn't know who did it. We didn't know if they were from around here. We didn't know a whole lot of stuff about it.
What was it first? Explain to me what that was.
It was pieces of paper.
Pieces of paper, what was on it?
I don't remember the exact wording.
Okay, but what was the premise of that particular paperwork? You know what?
Hateful.
Well, hateful what?
Well, I think this is,
No, excuse me,
Yeah.
Madam Mayor.
Right.
I just want one little question, I want a point of clarification. That particular language was hate speech. It was also distributed by, if you want to use buzzwords, people who would consider themselves alt-right.
Well, do you know them?
People would.
Do you know them,
The
sir?
language on that paper, I'm not saying I know them, I'm saying the language on that paper that was handed out is language consistent with hate speech, and that's what that was. As for this, as a heads up for you that you're requesting from me, you had a heads up with this being brought to you in a working session.
Well, sir, I guess I'm wondering whether or not I ought to ask for your resignation.
okay.
I'm
no.
not resigning.
Wait a minute here, wait a minute.
I'm not resigning.
Let's just focus on the ordinance here.
I don't
I'm happy
believe
to
this
do
is
that.
one necessary,
I'm happy to do
and
that.
Rich.
I'm not willing to go along with it.
Right.
Others may want to,
Okay.
I'm not going to.
All right,
Okay.
I think we
Okay,
understand your position, but let's focus on the ordinance and on that. Is there any other questions the council has over the text changes that are in the ordinance?
Well, I
Yeah,
was on
Betsy?
the initial committee mainly because I didn't want it in the first place, and then I listened to the committee that was formed, and this is what we came up with. And what Rich says, the buzzwords, you know, you can say something very plainly that will cover things for years. But if you put a buzzword in it, and then all of a sudden in 2 years, there's another buzzword, then you have to change it again. I mean, I think the way it is just fine. And I really, I don't want to change it either.
So I do want to clarify, though, but these were all changes recommendation by the whole Human Relations Commission.
Correct.
So they're the ones that all made the recommendation to the council, so actually, it's not the commission doesn't have, you know, that's not their duties to just contact one counselor and, you know, say this is what the changes we're going to do. So in respect, I think they followed the correct process here on that.
Oh, they did, but he didn't. He didn't keep his word.
Right.
Okay.
Well,
I'm not going to have you disparage me, sir. Do not disparage me.
I know.
Do not disparage me,
Did you or
sir.
did you not agree?
I did not agree
Okay.
to actually having not follow the process. I followed the process.
Right.
I
You
do not
followed the
disparage me, sir.
process, So, okay. So.
It's beneath you.
Yeah.
Right, okay, so, council, did you have any other questions then? So, I mean, I just want to say, I think the Human Relations Commission is one of our most active commissions that we have in the city, and they really out promoting Albany and really being, really spreading the word of that we are a caring community for all mankind, because that's who we are in Albany. And I really appreciate all that the Human Relations Commission does. And I know you put in a lot of extra countless hours and really appreciate it. So I think this is something that, a wonderful commission that we have with the city, and I can really see it being more expanded and even the role, with the Human Relations Commission. There is a lot of need out there and a lot of spreading the word to be respectful to all mankind, so we really appreciate that. Okay, so, Sean, would you like to read the first reading, please?
An ordinance amending Albany Municipal Code, AMC 2.25, Albany Human Relations Commission.
Okay. Council? Did you want
Move to have it read second time in title only.
Okay, is there a second on that?
I'll second.
Okay, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign.
Aye.
Okay, let's do a roll call on that, but I know at least it only takes one to not have a second reading.
Olson?
Aye, yes.
Sykes?
No.
Johnson?
No.
Kellum?
No.
Kopsinski?
Yes.
Coburn?
No.
All it takes is just one no, and then the ordinance is going to be brought back to our next council meeting for the second reading. So it needs to always be, to have it be read a second time for one council meeting, it needs to be unanimous on that first reading. So the next council meeting will be the second reading of the ordinance, and then we'll take action on it there.
What's the process after the voting process there? Is that also one no vote and the ordinance is not adhered to?
No, but it only just needs four votes.
Four votes,
Four
okay.
votes for passage.
Thank you.
On that.
Thank you.
Yeah. Okay? All right. Thank you so much. Thank you so much, too, for the Human Relations Commission. And you have River Rhythms. Are you guys signed up for,
Yes.
going to be at River Rhythm, the concerts this summer? And I know you guys are a busy group and really appreciate it. So, yeah, thank you. Okay. Next is adoption of the consent calendar. Council, there's just a few items on there. If there isn't any items that need to be pulled off this evening for discussion, I'll entertain a motion.
Pull off item number 2.
Number 2,
Number 3.
okay. Is that it? Okay, so we'll need a motion for adopting 1 and 4.
I move for the adoption of the consent calendar minus 2 and 3.
Second.
Okay, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Okay, motion carried. Okay, item 2, was that you, Ray?
Basically, just, I guess, a typo error or something on page 29 of our packet. It shows Deluxe Brewing at the top, and near the bottom shows Vault 244, listed twice for both of them. Do they have 2 different licenses or for both of them, or?
Good question.
Deluxe makes both beer, well, Deluxe makes beer, Sinister makes hard liquor.
Oh, I bet you it's the two different items.
No, it's one's distilling and one's,
Yeah. Does Captain Carter know on that one? Okay.
It's on like Vault 244, I'm wondering what, yeah. Oh, the same thing, Sweet Red is on twice also.
Yeah, it must be two different.
Maybe one for,
serve hard liquor.
is there one for like beer and one for hard liquor or something?
well, in the case of Deluxe, they make two different things. Deluxe is one and Sinister is the other. So I don't know.
I'm going to guess these are licenses for distribution, or for serving, not for
For serving, right.
manufacturing, but I don't.
Yeah. Okay. What would you like to do on the just, it's noted and staff can double check on that?
Just note, yeah, double check on it and
Yeah.
move on.
Okay. Would you like to make a motion on that one, Ray?
Move to approve item number 2 on the consent calendar.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carried. Item number 3, was that you, Bill?
It was, and just a concern, I mean, I'm not as smart as you guys, so you've already figured this out, but the additional weight and, you know, wearing metal into a fire, metal heats up, I mean, I don't know. Tell me a little more about
Oh,
it.
good. This is an easy question. Well, first off, good evening, Council, Mayor. So the idea of firefighters having ballistic vests are for primarily violent scenes or active threat situations. So the intent isn't that our firefighters are going to wear these vests day in and day out. It's just whenever it's needed.
Okay, that makes more sense.
The fire service used to be that firefighters would stay or would stage a few blocks out until police secured the scene. And after all the different incidents, unfortunate incidents we've had, the industry, our service has changed, where firefighters need to have a bit more risk or take on a bit more risk and go into the warm zone with police officers. So since we're going into those areas with police officers, with their guns drawn, it's probably good that we have the proper PPE to protect our people.
And then they'll be reevaluated after 8 years, and I'm going to guess part of that evaluation is use.
Yes.
Although things can deteriorate just sitting around, so.
Exactly. Where I think our local police department, their vest lasts 5 years, we're able to get an 8-year warranty with that reevaluation. And our
Right.
hope is,
You never use it.
well, absolutely.
That's my hope.
Yes, yes.
Anything else? Okay, thank you.
All right, Bill?
Okay, so with that, I'll make a motion that we adopt item number 3 on the consent calendar.
Second.
Okay. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Okay, motion carried. All right, now we're down to award of contract, and this one is for Carson, for commercial card lock fuel for 5 years. So Stuart, this is on page 34.
Thank you, Mayor. We've gone through a competitive bid process to evaluate the card lock fuel system, and the low bid coming in was Carson, and so we recommend adoption of the contract.
Question. Carson has both the VPN system, or the Carson system they have there, and they also have the other system in town, both card locks. Is this for one or the other, or both?
I would have to get back with you because I'm not familiar with the different types.
I don't know, I have cards for both, and one seems to be a little cheaper than the other, and I don't know why, but, yeah. You don't need to get back to me.
Well, I guess, just a question, if it is profitable for Carson to do $1.87 a gallon, that's quite a spread from what the public pays. Is that because of volume, or?
No taxes. That's before you tax, before taxes.
That's before taxes, okay.
That's the way Carson writes it down. So when you get your bill, there is the fuel cost at the location, and sometimes locations have different costs. But then there will be federal tax, state tax, et cetera. So you see all those taxes.
But the city's going to be paying those taxes also?
Well,
No.
I don't think so. Yeah, we
No?
don't pay the taxes, because we don't pay the taxes
Because
when
it's
we go to
commu-
Link County.
Okay, all right. You are the maxing agent.
So, question, Stuart, I can't believe that they're going to hold that price for 5 years, but I didn't see an escalation clause in here.
And to be honest, I wasn't on the evaluation team, so I can't address the question.
So it would be nice to know what they plan to do. I mean, again, I can't believe that they're going to hold the price at $1.87 for 5 years. A lot of things can happen in the world to drive up oil prices, but I didn't see it addressed in the language.
Yeah, it does say the charge per gallon will be locked in for the life of the contract.
I guess I'd like to have clarity on that before I vote on the resolution.
They may be getting a special deal from the spigot.
If it's, the current one runs out June 30th, so you kind of need this approved tonight.
That would be the preference, we would still, yeah.
And
So
if
I
they're-
can
if-
vote for this as long as you can come back to us with an answer on that question.
Okay.
Okay. Do you want to make it in a
Move to
motion
approve.
as that, to that?
Oh, well, sure, so I'll make a motion to approve the resolution.
Second.
On the
Third.
card lock
And-
gas purchase.
And with staff to bring back a report.
Yeah, well, if they can just come back with an explanation on the price, and if it is allowed to be increased, just what the language is on that. You know, you want some control. On one hand, if you can lock it in at $1.87, that's great. On the other hand, I don't think the thing will roll out of sight, and 3 years from now, it's $10 a gallon. You know, what are the controls on that?
Yeah. I think I heard a second. Was there?
Yeah.
Okay, all right. Any more discussion? Okay, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Okay, motion carried.
That's for the life of the contract.
All right, thank you, Stuart. And next is approval of the contract increase. And it looks like we have Stacy coming up and the chief.
Stacy and John Cho.
Just 1 second before you start. I flipped the page, Ray, and I see what you're seeing.
It says that there, that it's for the life of the contract and below the table.
The charge per gallon will be locked in for the life of the contract. I'd still like to know how they plan to address that. It's, you know,
I'll see if there was a...
if it sounds too good to be true, it probably
The
is.
guy that signed it, oh, he's not going to be around anymore. so-
Well, I guess, let's put it this way. Those folks have thousands of locations they sell gas to, and they have sales in the hundreds of millions.
That's fine.
What 400 people would use at a city, hey, go for it.
That's fine. Anyway, sorry, Your Honor. Back to the agenda.
That's really nice, Your Honor.
Okay.
All right, we're ready. So good evening, Mayor and councilors, and I haven't had a chance to meet you, Peter. I'm Stacy Belcastro. I work in Public Works Engineering.
Thank you.
This memo is a recommendation that council approve an amendment to the police and fire stations owner's representative contract with David Evans and Associates. Albany's municipal code requires that council approve amendments when the amount exceeds the original contract by 10%. The contract increase that is reflected in this amendment is approximately 33%. The owner's representative contract was based on a 20-month design and construction window. Right now, we're anticipating that the stations will be complete this fall. That 20-month construction window was supposed to end in April, so there's 6 to 7 additional months that are needed in order to continue to provide owner's rep services through the duration of the project. Payment for these services is based on a time and material basis, and so payments only made for actual time that David Evans and Associates will spend on the project. So hopefully, as the stations near completion, the time that the owner's rep has to spend will taper off as well, and so we won't have to expend the entire amendment amount that we are requesting. thought I would share with council that Jeff Woodward of David Evans and Associates, he is the owner's rep for the city. He's been acting as the owner's rep since, I guess it would be April 2015, I think. And in this position, he's the liaison between city staff, the architect, the general contractor. He's coordinating permits, working with outside agencies. And another service that Jeff does that I didn't include in the memo is from the time design started, he reached out to adjacent property owners, answered questions they had about the project, and addresses their concerns. So we appreciate the work that he does in that area. More recently, in the last 5 months during the construction phase, he's been processing all of the requests for information and the change order requests that we receive. And this isn't a small undertaking. The police and fire station combined requests for informations is, I think, close to 500. And potential change orders are over 150. And don't be alarmed, that doesn't mean a lot of money. It's just that they're big projects. Jeff has a good understanding of the overall picture of the projects and is able to review and respond to all of this paperwork in a timely manner. He's looking out for the city's interests. He's not there to defend the design or to make money. He's making sure that the city's interests are being met. So Chief Bradner's here to answer questions, and I can answer other questions that the council may have. I just wanted to share that both chiefs do support this amendment and would like to see David Evans continue to provide owner's rep services, and there is budget to cover the amendment in the project.
Your Honor, I don't think I have a conflict of interest, and Sean, you can weigh in on this, but as you know, I have a private consulting business and from time to time do work for David Evans and Associates, but I'm not involved and never have been involved in working with them on either one of these projects, so I don't think there's a conflict, but just wanted to disclose that.
No, that wouldn't be a conflict.
Another question, Rich?
Why is it late? I mean, that is relevant, given if it was because we caused it, that's on us. If it's because there wasn't enough people put on the project, then that would be the builder. I mean, it took longer, so there are more months that he has to deal with it. And it's a number of months. What are the reasons?
It's weather.
The 20-month.
It rains in Oregon.
Yeah, the owner's rep, when we went out for the owner's rep, when we requested proposals for the owner's rep, we were basing that service off of information that was provided by our architect. So during the preliminary design, this was even before the bond measure was passed, they estimated a 20-month design and construction window for the services. They didn't adjust that until after we had already secured the contract with David Evans. And so it was during, I think we awarded, the bond passed, and then we were able to secure the owner's rep services in August, and then it was sometime after that the architect just revised the schedule.
Is the builder within the window that they said that they agreed that our contract says that they're supposed to be?
Yes.
So we're stuck, one way or another.
That's correct. September 15th, I believe, was the contractual date,
Mm-hmm.
and the fire station will be done within that time frame. There's been some adjustments added, I believe, to the police station. They'll be a little bit longer, but there were some inherent delays in weather and other things that they received credit for. So they're a little bit further behind the fire station, but will be done well before the September 15th deadline that was in the contract.
Police station's scheduled for October 19th right now is the date that we expect it to be complete.
And still within the contract. So, okay.
Yes.
Thank you.
So pursuant to what Rich is talking about, from your understanding at this point, we are still within the overall budgetary process with the contingency, we're going to still come in under budget? Or are we going to be using up basically 100% of the contingency that we allowed for that? Or,
We are under budget. I did an accounting at the end of May. I think it was effective May 31st, and I actually did plug in the amendment amount that we were asking for, and at that time, we were still under budget. So, there's always pieces moving and changing.
well, that's why we have contingency plans, but as, the hope is that you don't have to use them, so I'm wondering, are we going to be approaching that?
It'll be close.
Okay.
Bill?
Are there liquidated damages with both of the contracts for the completion date?
The contract allows for liquidated damages, but right now, it's too early to see if.
Oh, I understand, but if they don't meet that completion date, there are liquidated damages
Yes,
in the
there is.
contract? Okay.
Hey, Mike?
What was, I still don't understand what the reason was or is for the overrun.
I think-
Why the 33%? I don't understand that.
I think the biggest reason is the time. That it was originally anticipated that from the time we brought the owner's rep on until the project would be completed would be 20 months. And that 20 months was up in April of this year. And what took longer was the design portion of it. The construction has been within schedule, like you just talked about, that it'll be done here in the next couple of months. But the actual design portion of the project took longer.
So that was at the beginning of the contract that the design took longer, so the 20 months should have shifted at that point instead of at the 15 to 16 months later.
Well, the owner's rep was involved at that beginning portion of the process.
That's correct, but he had 20 months, and they should have known at that point, 16 months ago, that the contract was going to go over because the design took longer than what they anticipated for the 20-month contract of David Evans and Association, correct?
Well, part of the problem with that is that I would say September, we probably broke ground July roughly, but in September, October timeframe, when we were talking to our project superintendent, he was telling us, I'll have you in by July 1st. He says, I'm confident you'll be in by July 1st. Oh, wow, that's really good. And then the heavy winter came, and the rains, and the freezing temperatures, and that lost time for both projects, I believe. And so,
If that lost time, and that's an act of God, he wasn't on the project because the project was essentially shut down.
there's still work going on. They were still.
But not as much. It wasn't as hectic. I'm still having problems with a 33% cost overrun on this contract. It's not making sense to me. I understand that they had the 20 months, but it seems to me that David Evans and Associates should have known at the beginning of the project and thrown up a red flag and said, wait a minute, the design phase of this project is taking longer than we anticipated. We're going to need more money now instead of waiting 16 to 17 months at the end of the project and hitting us with a 33% cost overrun.
Stacy, excuse me, correct me if I'm wrong, but just to set the record straight, as I understand it, it's up to 33%. Is that correct?
Yes.
Not automatically 33?
Yes, yeah, we won't pay out the balance of the requested amendment amount if they don't work the hours. And we did identify, I think it was in January, early on that we did have this extended schedule that we were looking at, and they've been careful with their hours, and in fact, we're able to work, they've been able to work 22 months under their original contract, but we're at the point that the budget's going to be expended, and in order to continue the services, we do need an amendment.
And the 33% will take it through December 31st, if it's needed to go to December 31st.
But then by that time, there'd be liquidated damages if they don't hit the completion date, correct?
But the liquidated damages are in the contract with the builder.
Right.
Not this contract with David Evans and Associates. And I think to address your question about why way back when didn't we come and say, we're going to need a longer contract, is because it's really speculative at that point. You don't know how much it's going to slip. The design slipped, but then the builder was still saying, oh, we're still going to get done okay. So it's, from a staff perspective, you don't want to come to the council with things that are speculative if you can avoid it. So waiting until we knew and had a better idea is, generally our approach on these sorts of things.
It's better to be speculative on it, in my opinion, than to be hit with it at the tail end of a contract. Say, hey, we see this coming, this may happen, instead of all of a sudden, oh, wait, we're going to need up to 33% more on the contract at the tail end when it's supposed to be done in September. So that's where I'm coming from.
Sure.
Okay, council, what would you like to do with this item?
I'll make a motion that the amendment be approved.
Second.
Okay, and any more discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Okay, motion carried. All right, thank you. And is there any way that we can maybe set up for a tour sometime? I have not seen the inside of the new fire station yet and police station, so.
You bet. However we need to do that, I could take you on individually or take groups, however we need to do that.
Okay,
We can coordinate that afterwards.
Maybe after the holidays next week, we can set up something, so.
Sounds great.
Yep, it's looking great, so, thank
Thank
you. Okay, next, council, on page 41 is award of bid. This is the Marion Lift Station. So, Chris, is that your item, or is that Stacy's?
Stacy's got
Stacy's.
this one.
Yeah, I'll take this one. So this memo is a recommendation that council award a contract to Settlers Supply Company of Salem, Oregon. We received 5 bids for this project, ranging from the low bid up to $228,475. The Marion Lift Station is one of 3 lift stations in our system. I think it's 3 that currently have vacuum primed pumps. Public Works gets a lot of call-outs on the stations in our system that have the vacuum primed pumps. They're prone to leakage and plugging. This project will include modifications that will allow us to remove the existing pumps and modify the station in order to install new submersible pumps. We'll also be installing piping, a flow meter, valves, and control instrumentation. Let's see, the memo also identifies that this project is estimated to be approximately $26,000 over budget, but $17,000 of this is being held as contingencies, and if staff's able to keep change orders to a minimum, then it won't be expended. There are adequate funds in the sewer capital budget to cover the overage. Does council have any questions?
This Stetler Supply Company, is that a new contractor for the city? Because I don't recognize the name.
Salem.
Yeah, they have worked here before, but it's been a lot of years. I think it's probably been over 10 years.
They're an old company.
They are, okay. All right.
So-
Questions, Bill?
Well, maybe you can explain, you mentioned it, the preliminary estimates, all right, would be over budget. I understand how those things work. I'm laughing to myself because we just had the discussion about not projecting, hypotheticals until we, actually have it. But when the bid comes in under the engineer's estimate, why would we be projected to be over budget?
It's the way that the project's budgets are developed. So when we set the budget for the Marion Lift Station project, it was done a year and a half prior to or like 6 months prior to the budget being adopted. Then we went through the design phase. So here we are like a year and a half after we developed that budget, and costs have increased, and so that's why.
Yeah, that's exactly right. So we define sewer capital projects annually as part of the CIP and the budget project process. And so this project cost estimate that was plugged into the budget of $200,000 was developed in probably December of 15.
Yeah.
And so, and that's based on our experience with similar projects up to that point. Then it gets designed, and the engineer's estimate gets developed based on projects up to that point, which is now almost a year later. So as everything's gotten more expensive in the last couple of years, that's happened. And really, the $27,000, there's several $1 million in reserve in the sewer capital budget. It's not going to be a problem.
It's also very timely with this chemical manufacturer that wants to enter Casey Enterprises is, so.
Yeah, it's going to be a good project. Like I said, we do get a lot of, the mechanics get a lot of call-outs for this station in particular, so they're happy that it's going to be upgraded.
Thank you. I'll make a motion for award of the bid to
Second.
the low responsive bid.
Okay, any more discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Okay, motion carried. And next item is approval of the grant application and award, and this one's for the airport. So, Chris?
That is me. Okay, so I want to refer you to replacement pages that were on the dais that replace pages 45 through 49 in your packet. It's the memo with John's name at the top. So he's here if I go sideways. Okay, so tonight's request is simply for the council to authorize staff to submit a grant application to the FAA for project AR 1702, which is reconstruction and repaving of our main apron at the airport, and includes addition of tie-downs at the appropriate spacing, which they are not at right now, and reconstruction and realignment of the center taxiway connection. The maximum amount of grant funds we would receive is $966,764, which includes $266,764 worth of non-primary entitlement funds, and then an additional $700,000 of discretionary grant funds, and I'll point out why that's important in just a moment. For these projects, the city is required to provide a 10% local match, which in this case is $107,418, which will come from the Airport Capital Fund, which we have adequate funds in that budget to pay for this. The complicated part of this project is that at the last minute, meaning Monday, the FAA told us that the discretionary fund amount, which is a competitive funding source from the FAA, for this project had been reduced. So that's why you have a replacement memo. $700,000 is less than we had been originally programmed to receive. So their recommendation was to break the project into two phases, one which will take place this federal fiscal year and the second phase next federal fiscal year, which they would fund with next year's discretionary grant funds. So
This week?
No, federal fiscal year starts
Next year.
October 1st. Our consulting engineer is currently breaking the project up into two phases and has contacted the low bidder, which is the other awkward thing with FAA projects. You have to bid it first before you can apply for the grant. So we have the bid cost for the project. So best case scenario is that everything goes smoothly and we'll move forward, and then we'll come back July 12th with a request to council to authorize us to accept the grant and award the contract. That's what we anticipate happening. It could happen that the bidder refuses this new phasing, in which case we would sort of have to figure out where we go from there at this point. And we don't know what the answer is to that yet, but the project would remain on the CIP list for the airport as our next project. We just have to figure out when the funding would be available. In any case, it does no harm to pass this resolution tonight. So, and it's beneficial. If the chips fall correctly, we will have aligned this with our internal finance process for grants, where we ask permission to apply for the grant first, which identifies the match amount that we're committing, and then the FAA writes the grant, and then we'll accept it and move on. If we pass the resolution tonight and we apply for the grant and the project falls apart, no harm has been done because we aren't committing to receive or expend the funds right now. So that's the request tonight, is just simply to get us processing this grant application now in case things do line up and we can move forward. And if they do, we'll be back in 2 weeks with more information.
Okay.
I'm happy to answer any questions. It's pretty complicated.
Okay, so, this is the replacement resolution then for your resolution that's on page 48?
Right, we
Is that
originally
correct?
had 2 resolutions because the FAA was sort of cramming this on us, and we were going to ask permission to apply for and accept the grant, which we don't like to do. Now, we're just asking to apply for the grant.
Okay, so the 48 and 49, we don't need to adopt on those pages, just this one?
Correct.
That's handed out, okay.
Move to
Gotcha.
approve the replacement resolution.
Second.
Okay, all right, any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Okay, motion carried. Thank you, Chris. And let's see, next we have the agreement, and this is with ODOT for Ellsworth and Lion Street. So must be Stacy's again. Keeping you busy tonight.
So staff's recommending that council by motion authorize the mayor to enter into a cooperative improvement agreement with the Oregon Department of Transportation for construction of ADA ramps on Lion and Ellsworth Street between 1st and 9th Avenue. Per the terms of this agreement, ODOT's going to be contributing up to $700,000 towards the construction of the ramps. After the project's finished, there will be a total of 81 ramps that will be improved to current ADA standards. Construction of the ADA improvements on this corridor was included as a schedule in the Harris Streetscape project. It was awarded to Emery & Sons Construction in May and currently is under construction. The improvements on ODOT's right-of-way are on hold pending execution of this agreement, and then we need to get the permit from ODOT. That would be the next step. I did check in with ODOT today. They're anxious to get the agreement executed and start paying the city money to get these improvements done. And they also committed again that they were going to be completing an overlay on Lion and Ellsworth following the ADA improvements and construction of Kara's improvements. Right now, Jeff Shambo, who is ODOT's pavement manager, he has that work scheduled for June of 2018 is when the overlay will happen. The other thing, I guess, that I wanted to bring to council's attention is the agreement is still calling for the blinky light improvements, the interim improvement to the fire signal at Ellsworth and 6. We still are in the process of getting approval for a full traffic signal from ODOT at 6 and Ellsworth. We've submitted the application. Their regional engineer has approved the application, and they've recommended that the state's traffic engineer approve the traffic signal. So once we receive approval from the state traffic engineer and get an approved design, then I'll be back at council asking that you execute still another agreement for a full traffic signal at 6 and Ellsworth.
Great, right?
It's been a torturous process to get to this point where we have a map that looks like this. Thank you. I tangentially brought it up at the MPO meeting this afternoon, thanking ODOT for the collaboration on making this happen. And Franny, the ODOT representative, was all smiles about that and thought that it was a good way for the community and the ODOT to actually work together and come up with a successful solution. So thank you, everybody, for all the hard work you put into making it happen.
Okay. All right, council, you have an agreement that's on page 51.
Move to approve.
Second.
Okay. Any discussion?
I'm going to have to vote no because of the idiocy of this traffic light situation with the fire stations.
Okay. All right. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign.
Aye.
Okay. Motion carried. All right. Thank you, Stacy. Okay, council, next is business from the council. Bessie, did you have anything this evening?
No, I just was On the news tonight, I was just thinking that Vancouver, Washington, their council is going to deal tonight with cats and chickens. And I thought, we've been there, done that and stuff, and I'm thinking,
We have.
thank goodness it's them, but
Yes.
this one lady says, well, I've got 5 chickens, but they're in my freezer, and I'm thinking, okay. Anyway, I thought, we've been there, done that, so we don't need to do it again.
No, we used to really have a big kind of a feral cat, population problem in the city. And then and we kind of try to see about if there was any kind of regulations. Well, no, that wasn't going to work. But what we've been doing since then is we appropriate funds that goes towards Safe Haven, that gives vouchers for people that have problem cats in their neighborhoods or feral cats. That really has reduced drastically the complaints. We do not get the complaints like we used to, so it's been very, very helpful to be able to kind of control that population.
Thank goodness we're past
Yeah.
that.
Did I hear that they had run out of money to do that? Safe Haven?
The Safe Haven did, but I think now that the new fiscal year, we'll be releasing some more vouchers, some funds.
I'm already getting calls.
Yeah.
Our money lasted until the end of November in the last fiscal year. The grant covers about 200 cats.
So
were they able to get enough from other sources to?
They have other
do what needed to
sources.
be done?
Yes, but our grant pertains only to people who live in the Albany city limits. Only cats, not dogs, not people from Millersburg, not
Sure.
people from Oakville. We get them all, we get calls about all that.
Oh, damn.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
That's all, that's all.
Okay, all right, thanks Bessie. Bill?
Thank you.
Dick? Yeah, Rich?
I have 2 things. Our favorite light at Hill Street and Pacific is giving people a whole 11 seconds to get through on the green. That's what it was when I came through coming here at 6:42, I think.
Yeah, Councilor Kellum mentioned this before the meeting, and we'll contact ODOT again. There's something wrong with that controller. It's been messing up for months and months.
Ages.
So we will talk to them again.
Well, and I know the guy that works on that. I've called him twice, and the second time, somebody mentioned it might have something to do with the fire station being there on Hill. In other words, when they come through, it would foul up the timing. Obviously, that's not the situation tonight. I mean, you're not aware of a fire truck or ambulance that went out right before you. So.
And it's always Wednesday, it's always between 6:30
On
and
the way to
7.
council.
What?
On the way to council.
On the way to council. Well, of course, that's
It's a
the way, that's
feature.
when I see it, so. But traffic was backed up clear to,
It is a
I
problem.
don't know, the Arco station.
So I recommend staff call them.
We will.
And it isn't always just me, it's like,
I was-
Bill.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was doing it more for people behind the lenses. Update on the house on Marion. It seems that this is something that happens to a lot of folks or a lot of places now. The house on Marion has a set-aside program from the state for property taxes, and the state pays it, and then
You mean
these people...
Maryland, don't you? Maryland
Maryland.
Street?
Yeah.
Not
Maryland
Marion.
Street.
Yeah, I think you said Marion.
Yeah, you said Marion, and so I
Yeah,
thought I
I'm
said
thinking of
Marion.
Marion.
Well,
Yeah, okay.
my bad.
I'm sorry.
Maybe I was trying to keep it away from Maryland Smith. Anyway,
spent more time
so
at
what
that house
happens
than anybody
is
else.
people age, and sometimes the house goes into disrepair, and then none of their family wants to have it. This particular house, they thought it was $35,000, it's more like $75,000 worth of liens against it to the state, most of which are interest. So what happens when that gets paid off is that comes out of the county and all the taxing districts, because all the taxing districts got the money before, so all the taxing, and we're the biggest chunk. So we're going to take a hit at some point in the future, not just on this house, but a number of them. The commissioners were talking about going to other commissioners, because this is something that happens in other counties as well. And then talking to the state about, at the least, see if we can get the interest curbed. But that's where it's at. They're still going to try to get out there quickly and get it cleaned up. But that also may have a kibosh put to quickly with the ability to, who has the authority until they can get with the guy that owns its relatives. But it's in the works, but I didn't want to leave you with the wrong impression that I would have left you from Monday. In the works, but ugly. And that's it.
Okay, all right, thank you. Ray?
Tomorrow, high noon, Waverly Lake, be there or be square. Relaunch of the Waverly Lake Duck.
Yep, I know, and I think Kyle, is it Neil going to be there reporting on that tomorrow?
I'm guessing it'll be Neil. He's all
I think so.
He's-
Yeah.
He's there.
Yeah, so, yep, we're excited. Okay, is that it, Ray? Okay, anything, Mike?
No.
Okay. And I didn't have anything this evening, so Peter, did you have anything?
Yeah, on the work session on Monday night, there were a couple of items, and I think we wanted to address a few of them, and I think Javier's ready to address a question about Blue Sky.
Yes. I know that Council Coburn was asking about the Blue Sky, how much we're paying on Blue Sky, and I was showing to Peter, I looked at the bill, we pay a monthly bill for the Pacific Power about $153,000 a month. And out of that, we're buying 361 blocks, which is equivalent to $390 only at the Public Works operation to cover Chris's office. She's kind of into environmental stuff, so.
I don't
just kidding.
I don't know
No,
why that started,
But it's there. It's only
honestly.
360 blocks we're buying, which is
Yeah.
$390.
Look,
So
if she
it's-
likes it, let her pay for it.
Well, you know.
So it's not every building in the city, obviously?
No,
it's
I
just-
have the
just
bill here, it's just one
building.
item, and it's
Yeah.
in Public Works Ops, and we just don't know how that got into that, but it's $390 out of a $153,000 bill.
And I don't know how that got started. If you'd like me, I can cancel
No,
it. I
no,
don't-
it's, I could talk all day about this, not for
Okay.
$390.
Okay.
All of our time is worth more.
I didn't even realize I was doing it, so.
Yeah. Is there anything else that council want me to do with this, or just leave it
No,
as it is?
that answered my question.
Okay.
Another thing that was brought up was medical transport fees, and those fees have stopped being charged as of yesterday morning, Tuesday morning. Okay? And then finally, Sean, I think you might be able to address the ordinance that is on the table in front of people.
I can do that. I actually drafted the ordinance, but it's not on the table in front of me, so I didn't get a copy of it, so let me take a look at it.
Yeah, I don't think any of us have.
We didn't think any of us did.
Okay.
Oh, okay.
Oh, for
So it doesn't
repealing.
look like, yeah, so.
We did not provide copies because we were going to wait for a report on
Okay.
the options available to you.
So we were asked at the work session to create an ordinance repealing the prior ordinance dealing with the regulation of taxi cabs. So I drafted an ordinance tonight that would do that. A question came up as to when that would take effect. And I don't necessarily mean an emergency clause in the ordinance itself, but if the ordinance were to take effect, say, June 30th, the taxi cab companies who have paid for these licenses already this year have already paid for the entire year. If we were to have it take effect at the end of June, then we would in effect potentially owe a 6-month refund on parts of these licenses. If we were to allow this ordinance to sunset and take effect December 31st, I understand from staff that from an accounting standpoint, that would be more desirable. But that is there's definitely two options there for council to consider tonight. It's about $1,900, actually, Rich. I asked about that question, too. I said, how much money are we talking about? Is it a lot or what? Total, I believe, was about $1,900, so.
I don't think I have a problem saying that, as of January 1, 2018, we're no longer regulating taxis and no license is required.
And the only other thing that could complicate something, if someone were to walk in tomorrow and want to get a taxi cab license, then at that point, we would still be obligated to prorate a license for the remainder of this current calendar year. So, and that's it.
Right. So, usually when it comes to any sort of ordinances, we do have it on our regular agenda too.
Right.
So will this be coming forward for our next agenda then?
We can bring it forward on the 12th of July at the next council meeting. And
Why don't I give you an
did
opportunity to insert that language too, so.
Yeah.
Right.
about the, okay, the sunset,
I did see
absolutely.
some on social media, there was people, for repealing it, there was some people that were against repealing it too, so some people feel that it should be regulated, so I think it'd be good to have it advertised on our next agenda in case somebody does want to comment on it publicly.
Is
Yeah.
there any possibility that Uber or Lyft are going to show up in the interim? Because if
I
they
would,
do,
in the interim, I would doubt it, because I think they just went fully operational in Salem. I don't think they're up and running in Corvallis or Eugene yet, and I would think, being college towns, those will be the next places they try to get into. So between now and December, I would doubt they would try to get up.
I guess I would have an issue with continuing to leave it there if we're not going to do something, because we don't have any way to say Uber or Lyft have to pay something.
Right.
And if they are, at some point, we're going to walk into Albany and want to start business, then at that point, we should give the other people's money back.
We could adopt, at that point, do a resolution
As long as we
refunding
have to
whatever
do
money's
something
back.
about it.
Amended.
Yeah, we can do that too.
It's interesting, I had dinner with Jim Delaporte the other night, and I was telling him about this issue, because I said, hey, your name came up in discussion. He goes, what? What'd I do now? No, I mean, staff, or Wes reminded us again of if you have all these rules and regulations, then you need to enforce them, and it increases the potential for liability against the city if you don't. Jim went on to say that's exactly what happened in Eugene. And I don't remember the particulars, but, they went right down that road. They had additional regulations, something happened. That individual sued the city and won because there was the implied protections or whatever that was anticipated. So he says, yeah, I think you're on the right track, and just back away from it.
And finally, I wanted to note, I'm the new guy here, so maybe you all know about this, but an interesting piece of historic preservation today in the mounting of the 1877 fire bell over at the new fire station. And finally, I wanted to note a little piece of maybe bad news and good news, depending on how you look at it. The bad news that I've stopped paying transient lodging tax, and the good news is that I guess I'll start paying property tax, and I now have a home in Bothell, or in Albany, sorry.
Yeah.
So it's
We like
closing
that.
tomorrow?
Closed.
So it closed today?
There you go. But he still didn't get possession
Nope, not
of the
yet.
house?
Not yet.
Oh, boy. Oh, that's wonderful, yeah, okay. Anything else? Staff have anything else? Okay. With that, we are going to recess to executive session to discuss deliberations with persons designated by the governing body to carry on labor negotiations in accordance with ORS 192.660 2D. And we need to wait till Michael